Hey guys, so in today's video we are going to talk about the Caro Kann defense. I'm going to show you how to get a comfortable position and even a slightly winning position out of the Caro Kann defense, how to properly play against tricks, and after this video I guarantee you are going to have a good repertoire so you don't lose in the opening. So it starts with e4 and then you play c6. This enters the Caro Kann. And now there are many variations that they can play. Let's start with the most popular one, which clearly is the advanced. So in the advanced variation, they're trying to take more space in the center. So now you gotta make sure you develop your bishop. Now there is another variation. This is called the Botvinnik-Karls variation. But I won't specifically cover this in this specific video. I'm only going to cover the advanced and other kind of variations. So here, after you develop the bishop, there are many trick lines. And let's start with the first one. So this is h4. This is called the Tal variation. A certain world champion called Michael Tal used to play this against everyone because it's sort of aggressive. And the right way to play against this is by playing h5. And even h6 works. So now after h5, they usually trade the bishop here. But if they decide to develop like this, you just do your stuff. This pawn break is going to be very important and you're going to see it very often in today's video. So this pawn break with the move c5 is very important. If they take, you are going to take with the bishop. And if they don't take, don't worry. You can set pressure with the knight. You can set pressure with the queen in some lines. And the point is, you are going to bring your bishop back and put your knight here in order to target this pawn. If he doesn't want to trade, and if he ever takes, you're going to develop your bishop with a tempo and put it on a good square. This is the way to play against the Tal variation. So what other variations are there? Where there is this one. If you are looking at my videos, you see that I always play this against my opponents because it's very tricky. And that's why you have to drop back. There also is a variation where you do this to destroy their pawn structure. And this is considered slightly better. And your opponent is likely to play e6 here. So now the correct move is queen to d6. You need to find this move, otherwise it is very dangerous. If you ever take here, he's going to try and trade on this diagonal. If you move the bishop, it's even better in some scenarios, but you have to take back here. And now you really are in danger, and if you don't play queen d6 here to protect this pawn, you're not going to be able to castle, and this is actually the variation that I play against my opponents. And sometimes they do fall for the tricks, so if you're looking at my videos, you're going to see many wins with this variation. Be careful. Now, what other variations are there? So they can also just develop the knight, in which you just do what I showed you before, something like this. If they ever want to trade with the bishop on d3, you're going to trade back, and stuff like this is fine for you. So what else can they play? Usually, this is probably the most played line. You're going to trade, as I said. And if anything else, you just continue the same pattern that I've showed you before. You play e6, and I've already showed you why e6 is so important. Otherwise, they're going to push themselves, and you either, in some variation where the bishop is here, you're going to have to ruin the pawn structure, or you're going to block your pawn and hinder the development. So that's why e6 is always a very crucial move, except in this variation. Because if you play e6 here, this is the trick. They can trap your bishop like this. And your bishop really cannot move anywhere. And you're losing. So in this variation, the Tal variation, you have to play h5 or h6 is working as well. So I'm going to touch on the Tal variation a little bit further because after this, the reason I like to play h5 is because with h6, they can trade like this, or they can push it once again, you drop back, and then they trade. And now you've moved the bishop so often that after trading, they even got a little bit more space, and I don't really like to play this with black. Okay, let's go on to the next variation. So let's say they play something like this, or even this. This is almost the same move. So after they develop the knight, you take. They take back, and now there are two variations that I'm going to show you. One variation is going to be knight to f6 trading. This is called the Tartakower. And another variation, this is the classical variation. There, you attack them with the bishop, they attack you back with the knight, and you bring back the bishop. This, before the Tartakower, used to get played all the time. People used to play this line every single time against this specific knight to c3 move. But now, the engine considers knight to f6 better, and after takes you take. There is a special gambit going on, called the Alien Gambit. You may have heard about it, and people play like this. So now, theoretically, you can just play h6, but you need to be careful because this is getting dangerous for you. You've opened this diagonal and he's going to put the bishop here. So now let's say after bishop here, it's important that you play c5. Because now you're trying to open the center and trade the queens. That's really what you're trying to do. They're going to try to jump in here with the knight, and after you move back to put the bishop here. So I'm going to show you the trap. Let's say you play something like h6, a waiting move, right? They give you a check, and if you go here, it's already checkmate. And if you go here, it's getting really dangerous for you after some really exotic queen moves. You gotta be careful. That's why you block in the center, and after this, something like knight e6 is completely fine. Pinning never really works because of this move. So be careful, you cannot pin them because they got check and they're going to collect the bishop. So if you play against the Alien Gambit, knock in the center, try to trade the queens, bring your king to safety while also trying to develop the other pieces, and you're going to be completely fine. But if you aren't good at defending, you should be careful with playing h6 here. You can just play something like e6, bishop to f5, knight d7 and stuff like that if you are unsure. But though you can learn many lines. So there also is the two knights variation, where here they just develop the two knights, so you take and kind of enter in a Tartakower. This is the basic stuff, but usually they like to go stuff like this, or even d3, but then you just take, and this is completely fine for you. Though you gotta be careful, this is most likely a drawn position. So here, you just develop normally, like in the other Caro Kann openings, and this is why the Tartakower is considered a better variation. Because if you take a look at this, you have one more pawn to the king side, which means they have to fight against one more pawn if they try to attack you. And that's why the defense is much better here. You're going to be able to play stuff like g6 and hide your king in here without being able to get sniped from this diagonal or any other diagonal, maybe this one as well. So that's why this pawn is very powerful. As for other lines, people play the exchanged Caro Kann. They kind of go for something like this. This is called the Hillibilly Attack. And then here they take. This is considered pretty good for black, though you have to know how to play. You shouldn't panic. Some people even go stuff like this. This is even considered a little bit better, but it doesn't really matter because after this, you're just going to develop normally. You have a slightly stronger center, and after something like this, you just develop castle, and then push c5 as I showed you before. c5 is a very important move in the Caro Kann defense, and if you knock in the center, They're usually going to play stuff like c3 if they haven't put the knight here to try and defend that. You usually take, they take back, and now you have this diagonal open for attack. In this specific variation, you can play rook to b8 and pressure over here, and let's say something like this, right? You drop back, and they're going to do a random move. Now you play rook to b8. How are they going to defend this? Like this, right? Now you attack them once again, and suddenly you have a lot of initiative. You can take, jump your knight in here, even push here, sacrifice a pawn, and then try to play for takes, and push. So there are a lot of moves that you can play here, but you have to be careful. You just have to recognize the patterns, play enough games, and soon enough you'll master the Caro Kann. As for other variations that we have, there is the Panov Attack, which is really annoying. It goes like this. So it goes like this, the exchange, and then they play the move c4, trying to knock in the center. You may realize that this is similar to the Queen's Gambit. And the basic rule for the Queen's Gambit is that you are not able to play stuff like knight to f6 here, defending the pawn. Because in this position, they can play knight c3, and this is not really good for you. In the Queen's Gambit, you're supposed to defend with the pawn first, like in the Queen's Gambit declined, and from here on, you're going to play normally. Let's say something like this. You're just going to castle, and here is the trick in the Panov Attack. If they ever move the bishop, then you take, because they have to move twice, and now you've kind of gained the tempo. You've lost a little bit of the center, but you've gained the tempo. And here you can just develop normally, bring your pieces out, and even though the Panov Attack may be annoying, you're going to be fine as long as you stick to the opening principles that you've learned before. There also is the accelerated Panov Attack, which is a little bit more tricky, which goes like this. And now you're just going to play d5, e takes d5, and you either play knight to f6 or you take. Usually I just take, and after this I just move back. This is an okay variation. They're going to have a little bit of a less strong center. Even though they have gained the tempo with attacking the queen, you're completely fine, and you can just develop normally like in the other variations. Now let me think if there are any other important variations that need to be learned. There also is the variation with bishop here, but you just take normally, and after something like this, just develop, put the bishop here, develop. And there is one last variation that I would like to show you. It's called the fantasy variation, and it's initiated after the normal Caro Kann, and they play the move f3. Here you just take and then push e5. The reason you play e5 is, after they take, you take the queen, and now you chase after this pawn, and you're going to be completely fine, because all their attack is gone. But they're going to develop the knight, and now you have to pin them. They're going to play bishop to c4, attacking the pawn on f7. This is the reason they're playing the fantasy, opening up the f file so they can castle and set a lot of pressure on this side of the board, and specifically on the f7 square. So you have to defend that, right? What can you do? Well, this pawn is about to fall, so you play knight to d7. Now they're going to play castles, and you can just develop the knight. And here they have to play something like c3. If they ever take, you take back and set a lot of pressure here and relieve the pressure from your side of the board by trading the pieces. This is going to be completely fine for you, and you are going to slowly take the initiative. So after something like c3, bishop to d6 is the way, reinforcing here, and after they play something like bishop to g5, you just castle. So if you've come this far in the video, you are going to be well suited to play any variation of the Caro Kann, because you've learned the patterns, and even though they may be playing some other kind of move orders, you are going to be fine, as you've learned a lot of lines and you can apply a lot of knowledge to this. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and check out the other videos I did.